Imagine a basketball game where the referees, the staff behind the scenes, such as the ticket takers, the people in charge of the lights, and the scorekeepers, are all on the opposing team's side. What would that be like? Say there's a game between the Utah Jazz and the Lakers. The Jazz gets the ball in the tip-off, everything is going great, but then the staff shuts the lights off. When the lights come back on, the Lakers are on the opposite side of the court, shooting into their own basket. They get the points. The Jazz gets the ball back, but the Lakers foul them non-stop until they take the ball back again, and the referees won't do anything about it. Despite all this, the Jazz manage to pull through and start to catch up to the Lakers. But as soon as they get close, the staff covers the top of their basketball hoop with a lid, preventing them from scoring any more points. That would be a pretty hard game to watch, wouldn't it? This is why I believe that market makers, hedge funds, and clearinghouses should have separation of power, like in the federal government, to mitigate conflicts of interest. You may be wondering what on earth that had to do with the basketball game. Let me explain. My speech is on the stock market. You know, where individuals can go to buy and sell stocks to hopefully make some money. Those individuals are called retail traders. Before we really get started, I'd like to establish definitions on the three entities that I've mentioned. First, a market maker is the platform where the actual trading happens. They match up the buyers and the sellers. Second, a hedge fund is a company that retail traders can pay to trade in the stock market for them. Hedge funds want to make good trades because while they are making money for the retail traders, they are also making money for themselves. And finally, a clearinghouse is kind of like the plumbing in the background of it all. They move all the money in all the forms. These three entities, market makers, hedge funds, and clearinghouses, should always be controlled by separate entities. That's just how the stock market was made. If they were to be controlled by the same entity, that would create a conflict of interest. My hope is to avoid such conflicts of interest, like what is happening right now. This leads me to my second point. What exactly is the problem? Imagine this. There's a big, successful car company that has a vault filled with exotic cars on display. The company has been around for a long time, and everybody trusts them. The cars in the vault are never taken out or moved. There's a problem, though. Every time the company gets a new display car, they take the title for that car and copy it 100 times. Their salesmen then take those copies and sell them to the public. Now 100 different people each think that they own this car, when in reality there's only one of that car in that vault. How could the public have known they'd been tricked? They didn't know the car had been sold to 100 other people. All they knew was that they had bought a car from a very reputable and long-standing company. Can you imagine that? Well, folks, turns out you don't have to imagine that anymore because this is exactly what Citadel is doing right now. Citadel is a group of companies whose practices create a conflict of interest because they're a hedge fund, a clearinghouse, and a market maker. And that little swindling move that they pulled, the one where they copied the title of one thing and sold it 100 times, in the stock market that's called naked shorting and it's illegal. Not that that matters to Citadel right now, because Citadel is our very own reputable, successful, long-standing, if metaphorical, car company, and they pull this very same swindling tactic all the time. They did it to Toys R Us. Remember that place? That cute toy store that your grandma used to take you to when you were younger? Yeah, well, Citadel is allegedly the reason that they're gone. Citadel had Toys R Us stocks, which they unfairly copied and sold hundreds of times. They were able to copy the titles because of their power as a market maker, and they were able to sell them because of their ability to trade as a hedge fund. They made tons of money off their forgery, and they were able to put Toys R Us out of business because of the simple rules of supply and demand. The stock became so common that it wasn't worth much anymore. When the supply was high, the price became low. The counterfeit copies dropped the stock price, siphoning money out of Toys R Us until they were forced to go out of business. Even if Citadel weren't actively trying to take other companies out, there would be no way for them to be an impartial market maker to fairly give buyers and sellers a platform to trade on because they are also a market maker, trading within the market maker, which they are also running, and thus with a vested interest in making money for themselves. And Citadel is doing all this while convincing the government that they are trying to take care of the retail traders. It's like Thanos, killing people and convincing the survivors that he is, in fact, saving them. Dave Lauer is a former Citadel employee who left the company to create his own platform that advocates for transparency and fairness in the market. He said, quote, "The biggest risk retail traders face in the market structure in 2022 is Citadel and other internalizers trying to convince the SEC and Congress that they represent retail, end quote. To make things even more unfair, Citadel hides their trades from the public eye in something called dark pools. Imagine dark pools as the vault from the car company analogy. The vault hides what's really happening. They hide what cars are really in there. They make it so Citadel can lie to their customers. They're one of the reasons that Citadel is able to copy their titles and sell the forgeries. There's no transparency. A free market should allow everyone to see what is happening at all times. Citadel is preventing this. If any of you have heard of the AMC and GameStop short squeeze, Citadel was allegedly the reason that happened as well. Citadel started the whole situation by first, of course, making and selling hundreds of copies of the AMC and GameStop stock shares, starting down the road that would eventually lead in AMC and GameStop's bankruptcy. What was Citadel's mistake? They didn't realize that there was a hardcore video game nerd with a history in finance, and that there are millions of other nerds locked up at home during a pandemic, and the nerds could communicate on the internet. To make a long story short, millions of retail traders bought the AMC and GameStop stock shares, tattled on Citadel. Citadel lost a ton of money, and both AMC and GameStop still stand today. In fact, Citadel should be bankrupt right now, and they would be, if they hadn't had so much power over the market. To save itself, Citadel used the influence to take away the buy button, preventing retail traders from buying anything else. Citadel unfairly saved itself from going out of business, using the power and influence that they never should have had, being a market maker, a hedge fund, and a clearinghouse. Some people make the argument that bringing more government control into the stock market could negatively affect our capitalist economy. I disagree with that. There are checks and balances in our government to limit power. If the president had supreme power, then we would have a dictator, and it would take away everything America stands for. The stock market was made to be the same way. No one company is meant to have supreme power, but right now, Citadel is the stock market's dictator. It has taken away our free market economy and capitalism. To put into perspective how unfair Citadel is, let me take you back to a certain metaphorical basketball game where the referees, the staff, and the Lakers are all one big team against the Utah Jazz. Just like the staff shut off the lights, Citadel uses their dark pools so the retail traders can't see a thing, only revealing what's happening when it benefits them. Just like the referees won't call any of the Lakers fouls, the SEC, which is the government entity supervising the stock market, won't call any of Citadel's fouls. And just like the staff covered the top of the Jazz's basketball hoop with a lid as soon as the Jazz started to win, Citadel took away the buy button when the retail traders started to beat them. In the analogy, the referees, the staff, and the Lakers are all one big team against the Jazz. That's never supposed to happen, is it? Just like a market maker, a hedge fund, and a clearinghouse should never be one big team against the retail traders. This leads me to my final point. How can we fix this? There are three main ways that you can help. First, contact your representative and ask them to put pressure on the SEC. Second, you could join the stock market. AMC and GameStop would be out of business today, just like Toys R Us, if it weren't for the millions of individual retail traders who stood up against Citadel. Millions of retail traders banding together have created an unprecedented influence in the stock market, and every retail trader counts. You would count if you would join the stock market to stand up against dictators. Last, and perhaps the most effective of the three, educate yourself. I've shared with you the information that I believe to be true. I believe that Citadel is a corrupt company acting as a dictator over the stock market. I believe that their power should be limited. I believe that market makers, hedge funds, and clearinghouses should have separation of power, like in the federal government, to mitigate conflicts of interest. I believe that instead of them being a huge team of the players, the referees, and the staff, they should simply be the stadium where the players can go to play. But as citizens of the United States of America, we can choose what we believe and how we react to it. But to be able to do this rationally, we must first educate ourselves about what is happening in our country. Because right now, while our stock market is so run by one company, Citadel, America does not have a free market economy. I hope you want it back like I do. I encourage you to educate yourself, and I encourage you to stand up for our country. Like Dave Lauer, the former Citadel employee, said, I believe we can change the system when we work together, point out corruption, and build a movement so big it can't be ignored. Thank you.